Hello, everybody, and welcome to Fridays at 5. I'm Karen Taylor of the Color Vowel Chart, here with some of our regular cast of characters and many new faces. I'd like to welcome them too. Special welcome to some of our Blue Canoe staff and team members. So we're glad to have some of you here. Let's see, we have Lucy Barr in the audience here. This is Robin's daughter. Yeah. And a lot of our folks here, and I see a couple of new faces too. So welcome. Hey, we're going to start by opening the chat, please. I do want to know if you have a question that we want Robin to answer. Meanwhile, I've put together some questions, and we are going to kick it off with a question from Jennifer. So, Jennifer, would you go ahead and ask that question that came up?
So we were talking about nicknames, and so I understand when they shorten them, like, my family calls me Jenny from Jennifer, makes sense. But I have an uncle, and we call him Uncle Ted from Edward. So why do we add a T when we're, nicknames are supposed to be shorter? So why do we add?
Do we have a timer?
Yeah, how much time?
Let's call it, I like 3, so let's call it 3 minutes.
Okay, I'll talk as best as I can.
It's and then we'll do, wait, we're going to have more fun than that. We're going to do 3 minutes, then we're going to take a vote. No, let's just make it 3 minutes.
Okay, the reason you add a T and create Ted is the same reason that you add an N and create Ned. And the reason you get Nellie from Ellen and is there another N example? I think Nolly from Oliver. That's an older one. Wow. But it's because when you have a pronoun, a possessive pronoun in front of the name, so you just said, well, that's my Ed, but it used to be it would be my Ned. My Ned, so it would be
mine, like mine.
Ed turns into my Ned, and that's where the ends at the beginning of the name come from. And the same thing with a T, it would be from well, the short for Vine or Ted. So that would be the second person plural. So your Ed, except with the T of the second person.
The same with apple, right? An apple.
An apple. Oh well, apron is a good one. That comes from the same root as napery. So napkin, napron, napery. But when you say napron, that turned into an apron. So I love when you have linking like that, and it means you can't tell where one word ends and the next one begins. So that's where a lot of our mistaken, I guess you call it's called missegmentation, which is a kind of folk etymology. There are even some doublets. So there's a lizard called an eft, but that's actually the same word as newt. So an eft or newt. You can see how the W and the F are connected there. It comes from Old English evete, like that.
But back to names, since we're on the topic of these nicknames.
Are my 3 minutes up? Is this a new question?
You have 27 seconds. What about some of those names, those nicknames that I can't think of, but that are so different from?
Oh, like original? Polly from Mary.
Yeah.
Or Molly, something like that. They all come from baby talk. So this is when kids are pronouncing their siblings' names or try to say grandma or something like that. The mispronunciations, I guess you could call it, or the distortions that they use are the ones that the family then adopts. So there's a fairly regular correspondence for each language, there will be rules for how you form the nickname. So if you're doing French, you'll take one syllable and duplicate it. So Miriam would become Mimi, and Natasha would become Nana, and so on. But if you have English, what tends to happen is R's and L's will get confused, and you'll also find that you might get denasalization. So if you have somebody named Mary, that might be Mally, which will give you Molly, or you could even have the M could become a P, so Polly, right? Same with Margaret and Peggy, same deal. So the M of Margaret becomes the P of Peggy, and you would never connect those two names otherwise.
Okay, just walk us through Mary once so we can put a cap on this.
Okay,
It's
so
fast.
change the R to an L. It's like one of those word it's like one of those word ladder games. Now change the M to a P. And figure that the kid only has two vowels. So Polly would, where that comes from, Polly. Okay.
Okay.
Now you could try Margaret. Okay, get rid of the R. That gives you Maggie.
Okay.
And now change the M to a P. And that gives you something like Peggy.
Mm-hmm.
And this is also where names for animals come from. So like magpie is Margaret the pie bird, or jackdaw is
Okay, you just exploded my head. I don't.
Okay, time to stop then. Okay.
Where's that timer, Jennifer? All right, so we're going to take this kind of approach. By the way, I haven't mentioned this is our fourth. What is it? Usually it's our fourth Friday. It's our first Friday. It's Ask the Linguist. So we are asking the linguist. But Robin and I have kind of developed a pattern that works for us when we have breakfast, which is we give somebody a timer, and every few minutes we have to change.
Like those chess games, you know.
Topics. Exactly. It's
like
just like a
chess
chess timer. And I find that's really good for my brain, at least. So
I have to interrupt and give a shout out to my sister Lori, who is down there in the corner from here. Lori, what was my nickname for you when I was a kid? Lala. Yeah.
Lala.
So that's what happened to Lori. Yeah.
So it's interesting that these are the R's and the L's, right?
Yeah.
It was Lala. Yeah, I didn't realize I was muted. Yeah, it was Lala for Lori. Yeah.
And then Lucy's, the way Lucy pronounced her name, that's my daughter Lucy Russell over there. She called herself Nini. And so when she was 2, and when people would ask her what her name was, she would say Nini. And so they would say, okay, Nini. And I had to really convince her teachers and friends and everybody, please don't call her Nini. She thinks she's saying Lucy. Keep calling her Lucy. So Lucy, your name was almost Nini. So that's where a lot of these other nicknames for in English come from. But Spanish nicknames are fascinating too, because you've got a rule in Spanish that the F's become P. So Fernando would become Pancho. And so what does Roberto turn into?
Paco.
Paco. That's cool. I like that. That's the B of I think that's the B of Berto, because that's the stressed syllable.
Yeah, or it can become Beto.
Yeah, Beto. That I've heard of. Yeah, Paco. I don't know about the K of the C of Paco, but what does Francisco turn into? Do you know?
Oh, I can't remember right now, but I'll ask the expert.
I don't know where Pepe comes from. Is
Does
it
any? I
Juan?
think we have a couple Spanish speakers in the room. Does anyone know?
I
Look
thought
over at the chat.
Francisco became Pancho.
Pancho, what does Fernando become?
I don't know.
Okay.
So can we? Juan is often Pepe. That's a good question. My Juan
I don't
isn't,
know where that
but
one comes from.
I'll have to
I
ask.
give up. Okay, you stumped me now. Next question.
All right, we're going to move into questions, and I'll be going back and forth. But if you've put your question over in the chat, I will largely go in order. So Natalia, you have a question. Hello.
Hello.
Hello,
Um,
Natalia.
Hello. It's great to be here. So actually, Dr. Barr, I think it's very fortunate that today we have this session because I really have a burning question. I've just started teaching an Indian English speaker, and what I figured out, and he's struggling with stress. And at
Yes.
first, I thought he was misplacing the stress, but then I figured out that he is actually inverting the stress. Kind of instead of going, and I have an example here, one moment. So instead of going external, he would go external.
Yeah.
Is it the feature of their language, or am I mistaken?
Oh,
Thank you.
no, that's a very interesting observation. I didn't know that happened in Indian English. One of the things that happens in Indian English, you may already have noticed, is that it tends to be stress timed rather than syllable timed, so that the length of the stressed vowel is not as obvious as you might.
Oh, that's for sure. Yeah, that's
That's for
another
sure.
one.
But the intonation is an interesting one. That's the same thing that happens in Swedish. So in Swedish, the pitch change is down instead of up. So that's why the Swedish chef sounds so stereotypically dirty, 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 dirty. So on the Muppet Show. I'm not doing a very good imitation of the Swedish chef. Somebody else should try it. But so if we're saying external, they would go external. So that gives a different melody to the phrase.
Absolutely.
And so you might also want to work on the pitch, but I would still work on the length of the vowel more, because even when the pitch is a little off, you can get you can still understand it, because that's where the pitch change happens. And there are dialects of English that also do something similar in the UK, like Liverpool English. If you listen to like an interview with Paul McCartney, he'll say, I was about to release a new single, I was about to release a new single, right? So that's a classic a Liverpool melody. And so but you're right about the Indian speaker. The stress makes him hard to understand. No matter how fluent he is, even a native speaker of Indian English will be hard for speakers of other dialects of English to understand sometimes.
Dr. Barr, wouldn't you at some point say that's Indian English, and in the spirit of multiple Englishes say that's okay?
Well, it's fine if the people who are listening to you also speak Indian English. So I mean, for example, Jamaican English is syllable timed also, but can be hard to understand for speakers of other dialects of English. So if you want to be better understood by people who have a stress timed English, then you're going to want to increase the length on the syllable. So yeah, I mean, there are multiple Englishes, and if you're talking about world Englishes and communicating with people who have the same stress pattern as you, then it's not an issue. But if you want to be understood by people who don't have the same stress pattern as you want to have that kind of a strategy. You want to know how to fix it so that how to repair any misunderstandings that are happening. And so if you have that in your arsenal, then you can. It's like Shirley's story about Canal versus Canal Street. Shirley, do you want to tell that story while I cough?
Time is up.
I like this. I want Shirley's story, so I'm going to invite Shirley to tell it. This is
Is there
fun.
anybody who hasn't heard it?
Everybody's heard it, but not
Tell
from
it
me.
again. I like it.
Okay, true story. I was teaching a pronunciation course at University of Maryland, and after the weekend on Monday we had class, and one of my students had been to New York City, Takashi, who is from Japan, and he said, "I have to tell you what happened to me in New York City." And I said, "So what happened?" And he said, "Well, I was with my friend and we were trying to find this place, and we kept asking people where it was." And he said, I would say to people, "Please, can you tell me where is Canal Street?" And nobody knew where it was. And I asked several different people and they all said, "I don't know, Canal Street, Canal Street, Canal Street." So finally he said, "I remembered what you said about how important stress is." So the next person I asked, I said, "Please, can you tell me where is Canal Street?" And they told me it was just 2 blocks away. True story.
Yeah. So he had that in his arsenal. He didn't take it out immediately, but given the push, he pulled it out. It's great.
Mhm.
Wonderful. Thank you. Well, I want to raise our next question comes from Now, and I'm going to invite Now to elaborate on her question, but I'm going to share, this actually touches base back to Shirley for a second. This is what we call the snowplow problem.
Yes.
That, we have this OW spelling pattern, and yet you never know if it's going to be more of a rose snow or a brown as in plow. And
you
it's
can even have homographs, BOW and BOW.
right.
Bow and bow.
Right. You can have bow and you can have bow, or you could even just play with these. If you take the S off, it was snow. You take off the S and it becomes now.
Ah.
And you take off the P of plow and it becomes low. And as my own husband and father noticed, then if you take just the OW here and put an L at the end, it turns from now to, you have owl, or you have own. So there are lots of, it seems crazy. Can you tell us about, do you want to add anything to that now as your question goes?
It's nightmare.
Yeah, I apologize for the history of English, but these come from 2 different sources. So the ow pronunciation comes from Middle English oo sound, but it was spelled OU because that was how oo was spelled in French. So that's why we have like house.
Okay.
House. And so at the end of a word, that U would be spelled with a W instead. So we wouldn't say HOWSE, it would be HOUSE. But we have like owl and now. But then we also have words that come from English that had a GH. So plow also is spelled PLOUGH. And so that GH turned into a W sound. That's the same W that we have in, I think, shadow, for example.
Okay.
At the end of shadow. Snow comes from an old GH, snagwa. Low. Own is related to like German eigen. There was a G there. So what happened to that G or GH that disappeared from English pronunciation, but sometimes it turned into other things, like the GH in laugh. There's a F there that you wouldn't necessarily expect a GH to be pronounced as, right? So all of these two major spellings for O and ow are come from two different spelling traditions, I guess you'd have to say, from the French one versus the English one, and they look the same. And then you have, how do you spell the second person pronoun you, Y-O-U? Well, that was spelled in 25 or so different ways in Middle English, and then we finally settled on OU, but that doesn't fit either of those patterns.
All right. So the answer for you now is
sorry.
We agree.
Can't fix that. Can't help it.
Wonderful. We have a great question from Tony Andrews, who's over here in the chat. Hi, Tony. Good to see you here.
Hi, Tony.
And it's written there if you want to look at it, but I'll have Tony.
No, it's the one about vacation versus vacation. And right. I have to say, I've never been aware of that. So is there a difference between I went on vacation versus I vacation in where's an exotic place to vacation in? Florida. Well, not so exotic, but I vacation in Florida. I vacation in Florida.
Interesting.
Versus I went on vacation. Do you anybody make a difference between those two?
It seemed weird to me that they would be different.
Yeah.
I'm seeing this for a lot of words.
Jennifer seems to think she makes that distinction. So maybe it's a British thing. Jennifer is pseudo-British. Anybody else have a British?
I always think of it as very American. I'm going on vacation.
Vacation. I'm going on vacation.
Vacation.
Vacation. I mean, there is the verb to vacate. So we do have that stress shift. So there's an underlying A in there somewhere. But why the verb should have less stress on the first syllable, I don't know. I mean, it could be part of the same general pattern that you have initial stress on the noun, but second syllable stress on a verb. So record, the noun, versus record, the verb. So maybe it's vacation, the noun. So there's a little more stress, like secondary stress on the vacation in the noun, but vacation, the verb. But that seems artificial because it shouldn't happen with the TION words. So I'm not sure about that. I never noticed that before. This is in the Oxford dictionaries.
Yeah,
Wow.
And I see the same thing happen for a number of different words.
Yeah. Well, they seem to think it's real, but on the other hand, it's Oxford, so it could be English pronunciation. Sorry, British pronunciations, and I don't want to say therefore not real, but not something that I have an intuition about.
You can say therefore not real.
So anybody else think there's a difference between the noun to go on vacation versus the verb to vacation?
Vacation.
Well, it's kind of an American word though, because most
you say
holiday. I'm going on holiday, or
Yeah.
I wonder if it's a bit of imposing, well, if they're verbing it, we better
fix the stress.
Right, they're imposing sort of a notion onto it. Well, this is sort of gets into my question that relates to Tony's, is these days who writes the dictionaries, really, if you have any thoughts on that, and what kind of responsibility do they carry toward representing beyond their own dialect or beyond their own what they consider the standard?
Oh, well, those are two different questions. But I've done some dictionary work, so sometimes you just round up the graduate students in a department, and if they flunk their if they flunk their generals exams, you have them do penance by doing etymologies. That's one of the things that happened at Harvard. I, of course, didn't flunk my generals, but it was known to happen. So a lot of the etymologies in the American Heritage Dictionary are courtesy of the Indo-Europeanist graduate students at Harvard. But the
And how often are they tired? I really, how often are they under caffeinated or over caffeinated or otherwise inaccurate?
Well, caffeine was not the problem with the Indo-European. I would say alcohol would be the drug of choice among classicists.
Okay.
So the Saturnalia type parties, toga parties before it was cool, but anyway, dictionary makers really do feel an obligation to record what's out there. So that's very important to them. What's interesting is that some dictionaries make a bigger deal out of elevating the standard. So I would say that Oxford, for example, likes to have the BBC English standard as the main pronunciation, and then maybe you'll have in parentheses American or something else, but they don't usually have, in addition, a northern pronunciation and what happens in West Saxon or Bristol pronunciation and a Scottish pronunciation in Australia. They don't go into all the different possible pronunciations, which are myriad, but a lot of times in an American dictionary you'll find fairly equivalent alternates. So whether or not you have the olive sock versus auburn dog distinction, you might have those two pronunciations side by side, for example. The other main difference is R-lessness, and the dictionary makers get around that by using a fake symbol.
Okay, we can't hear you, Robin. It's getting obscured there.
The symbol.
There we go.
See. With the fishhook R, I don't know if you can see that. That looks like a schwa with the little thingy on it. And this is everybody's favorite symbol. And the International Phonetic Association actually banned it in 1980 or so. And there was such an outcry, no, bring it back, that they said, well, okay, but it doesn't mean anything, because what dictionary makers and transcribers were using it for was situations where some dialects had an R and some dialects didn't. So the end of like doctor, and you're fine if you just put this in, because that covers both pronunciations. So it's either a schwa or it's a syllabic R, but it doesn't matter which one you pick, because they're both going to be correct. And that's a nice way of fudging it, but it's not very phonetically accurate.
That's pretty neat, though, for representing dialectal variation. That's pretty.
Well, it's ambiguous, or no, not ambiguous. It's vague. I guess it's vague enough to cover everybody.
Here we are with Dr. Robin Barr, who makes the distinction between ambiguous and vague. I like that. All right, we have a nice question from Mark Sherman about slang. What is slang?
Oh, yeah. Bad words.
When I posed the definition question, one of my students said that slang is bad words, but it's not quite that, is it?
No, it's not. That's a great question, because slang is such a pejorative. So I've heard people say, well, I don't speak slang, or I don't want to use that slang that the kids have nowadays. But slang is simply a jargon that is a specialized set of vocabulary that is used in informal situations, I guess you'd have to say. And it's basically a term that talks about the lexicon. So it's about vocabulary, and it's not curse words only. And in fact, some curse words are not slang exactly. They're of great antiquity, but they've been replaced because they're taboo, and so they've been replaced by euphemisms. But slang is usually words that are informal and sometimes new, but they're words that have been slang for years. You know, okay, for example, is over 100 years old, and it's still slang. It doesn't matter how long it's been in the language. It is an informal term, and it's going to stay informal for a while. So yeah, the technical definition of slang is informal vocabulary, not pronunciation, not informal syntax, and it's not taboo words only. But it is in general usage, in non-technical usage, that's how people view it. As you shouldn't use slang, right? It's a bad thing to use. I don't want to speak like that. Only uneducated people speak like that, or you're disrespecting me if you use slang, or something like that. You don't put it in writing. So that comes from all of the pejoratives that come from having from metalinguistic attitudes about the speakers of the language. So if you have a dialect that's disfavored, a non-standard dialect, then you say, well, they speak slang, and that's not a good thing to speak.
What about the word kid? Because a lot of my students are au pairs, and when I ask them to write, they're always talking about my host kids. And I keep saying, no, your host children. I insist on children. Where am I coming from with that?
Well, I mean, if you insist on formal pronunciation, then formal diction, then you could substitute children for kids. But on the other hand, do you let them say okay or other slang terms? And if so, then balking at kids versus children that's kind of a I don't know, not hypocritical, but inconsistent, right? But I have had to talk to some of my my students about using kids in formal papers when they're talking about adults versus kids in their I don't know, in their studies, right? If they're you know, the adults say it this way and the kids say it that way. I said, no, I'm sorry, in a formal paper you need to say children. And I've noticed that a lot of the non-native speakers will use kids in inappropriate settings. So if your students are saying kids in a formal setting, then that makes sense for you to correct them. But if in an informal setting,
you know, it's for writing. I tell them it's okay for conversation, but not for writing.
Yeah, and I wonder if there's a stronger collocation for host children versus host kids.
Yeah.
You know, if you look at just the usage out there, to me it sounds, I don't know about others, but it sounds more conventional to say host children, which tells me there's a collocation there.
I also actually, and in groups, it changes. I'm on Zoom and teachers meetings all the time. And all the teachers, I've noticed this at a couple different schools I've been at, they all say kiddos. How are your kiddos doing? And kiddo is it's used all the time with teachers. And so it's like this special word for us. You know?
I agree. I hear kiddo all the time whenever talking to somebody who teaches K through 12. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it is that for me, children and kids are maybe a 5th grade and lower. So kiddo might work better for the older students. Although I remember my daughter Lucy had a teacher who called his students Cherubs.
Cherubs.
Cherubs. This
Yeah.
is in high school. Yeah.
Yeah. For me, host children signifies people under the age of 9, and host kids signifies people under the age of 21.
Yeah. So yeah, I think you're for
So it's a
me
difference
anyway,
in age for me.
Kids. So I would say Lucy's my kid, but not my child necessarily.
child. Yeah.
Yeah.
Children, no, that doesn't. Yeah, that doesn't. But kids can be anything like up to 25. I feel like.
Yeah, your adult children or kids. Before we move on, I know Heather's in the room. Heather, do you have any opinions on the kiddo question? Is that widespread in your public school? Your charter school?
I hear kiddo way more than kids.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, they're either students or kiddos most often.
To me,
Yeah.
I noticed it, and I feel like it's like a professional way of showing they care about these people they work with, right? A kiddo, it's like affectionate, but still in the professional realm. What do you think?
I would agree with that. Yeah.
Interesting. So kiddo is in that sense more respectful than kids, or refers to students rather than just random children or something like that?
I know as a parent,
it's an interesting question, because I have a hard time using kids when I'm talking professionally. So if I'm referring to my students, they're either children or kiddos, which is kind of funny.
They're your kiddos.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas if you're talking about kids in the play group, they wouldn't be kiddos, they would be kids, or your children's friends would be other kids. Wow, that's an example of slang. Shirley asks, slang is in-group versus out-group. Yeah, so jargon would be in-group language, the vocabulary that is specific to a particular field. And here's a great example. So
so does kid come from child or from kindred?
Kinder? I'm not sure. I think it probably comes from the German Kinder. I'm not sure, because it doesn't have the palatalization that a child has. Although it could come from Northern England too. So Scottish doesn't have the so they got kirk instead of church, for example. So I'd have to look that up. I'm not sure.
When I also think of slang as being a very generational thing, kind of word.
It could be.
And you don't know what we're talking about because we're using slang.
So this particular cohort. Yeah. So in fact, that a lot of people think that's the whole point of slang, is to establish words that only the in-group knows, and if the out-group starts to use it, then you can't use it anymore. So it's like there was a point at which you couldn't say groovy anymore because people who were not groovy were using it.
Yeah, it's like a identification. I remember a track team in high school, and we were very close. It's like a group of 25, and we had our own words we used to identify things, and just particulars about track and field. And then it just disappeared when I went to college, of course, because we knew we're no longer around.
Yeah, it didn't catch on, but OK itself was originally one of these abbreviations that was. It's one of the most dubious etymologies I've ever encountered. There's so many different etymologies for OK, but it's actually the one that seems to be the likeliest is it comes from a humorous misspelling of all correct. OLLKORRECT, if you can see the chat, and then you abbreviate that as OK, and then that means you're cool because only you and your in-group know what OK means, but that took off really widely, and it's really unlikely because usually that kind of acronym doesn't get into the language until the 20th century, but this was a 19th century coinage. But there are plenty of 20th century acronyms. And if you live around DC, there's alphabet soup, and you talk about the NRC and the QRX and the and nobody knows what you mean unless you're from DC.
Unless you're from the DMV.
The DMV, yes.
There's another one.
I still don't get that. I'm like, I don't want to go to the Department of Motor Vehicles. Why would I want to do that?
For all of our people outside the area,
Yeah.
DMV is the DC, what is it? Maryland, Virginia.
Maryland, Virginia, yeah.
metro
Oh,
area.
it's not Delaware, it's DC. Okay, I didn't even know. Yeah.
It's the DMV area.
Okay,
Wonderful.
next question.
Next question. We've got a question from your own daughter about why it is that those British just take out words like in hospital or on holiday instead of in the hospital on a holiday.
Yeah, why do they do that? What's up with that? Yeah, whether you have the article or not really depends on well the local dialect, but you do it yourself when you say in school. You can say,
yeah, Mom, that's the second part of my question. You didn't let her finish.
Oh, sorry.
Well, I did continue either, but please go ahead, Lucy, go ahead and ask the question.
Yeah, I mean, the rest of my question was, for that matter, we also do it, here in America, we say on vacation instead of on a vacation. And then the other one that I came up with was, oh, he's in bed versus he's in his bed.
Right.
We can say I'm at work or I'm at school, but we can't say I'm in office the way that we can say I'm in bed.
Yeah.
How does that work? How is sometimes it's okay and sometimes it's not? Are the rules the same for both America and Britain? What the heck is going on?
Good questions. I think what's going on is these are relics of I'm going to go back to Middle English and maybe before. These are relics of a time when you could have locatives, names for locations, and you didn't need to put the articles in front of them. And the best example I can think of is home. So I'm going home. You don't say to home, right? Or to the home, right? So you don't have to have a preposition, and you don't have to have an article for forms like that. But then that gets expanded, and so that words that didn't used to do that can also fit into that category. So I remember you say, let's have dinner, let's have breakfast, let's have lunch. But ordinarily I would have said, let's have a snack, or, it's time for dinner, time for lunch. But when I was volunteering at Lucy's preschool, snack worked like dinner and lunch. So let's have snack, or it's time for a snack. And to me that seemed weird because I couldn't, snack used to have an article in front of it, but in that context, it fit into the, time for X meal situation. And the same with go to work, but not go to office. That would, for me, be an example of you can do it for basically English words, but not French borrowings, right? But on the other hand, we have on vacation instead of on a vacation, and that's a borrowing. Holiday is a native word. On holiday, I'm going on holiday. So yeah, different dialects will preserve different combinations. That's true. Yeah, Jennifer.
I tell my student, there's a lot of questions about that with beginning students, and I tell them that home, work, school, and church are kind of special words in English, and that these are words we don't need to use the articles with. And when we talk about being at church or going to work or he's at school, we're really not talking just about the place. We're also talking about the expected activity that's happening there. So if I say he's at church, you know that he's there, he's probably praying, you know, maybe he's at coffee hour or something, but anyway, singing, praying. But if I need to talk about, well, I left my sweater, I need to go up to the church. At that point,
Yeah.
I'm only talking about the building.
Right.
So those words and home too, to me, they connote more than just the place. They're
right. So I'm going to his home, but I'm going home. You wouldn't say, but I'm going to my home. And the same with French. You can't say rentrer chez lui, because that rentrer means go back home to your own home. And so you can't say I'm going home to my own house. That it doesn't it's redundant. Yeah. What's interesting is the way it gets expanded. So he's in hospital means that he's sick, and that's why he's in the hospital in my dialect. But if you're a doctor, you don't say I'm at hospital or I'm in hospital. You work in the hospital, right? So that confirms what Jennifer was saying.
At the hospital, yeah.
Is it possible that the terms are acquiring an adverbial sense, like going back is the same structure as going home?
Oh, home is definitely an adverbial there, and both back and home would come from old oblique cases. It could be illative, it could be locative. So a place you go to, or a place you're at. Yeah. In fact, that's why when you ask a question, where are you from? You could say, where are you from? You are from this place, but where also includes at in it. So that's why in some dialects you can say, where are you at? But other dialects you can't say, where are you at? It's just, where are you, right? So I am at where, I am at the store, versus I am at where versus I am where. So if it's working like an adverb, then where includes the preposition at. Whereas if it's acting like a place, like a noun, then where does not include the at. So I mean, you could say it's nothing to do with ending a sentence with a preposition. You know, that's not why it's considered, you know, wrong or bad to say where are you at. It's because that particular dialect, which is usually Appalachian and Southern, doesn't treat where as including the preposition at, and it's disfavored because it's not the prestigious dialect. That's all. It has nothing to do with it's illegal to end a sentence with a preposition. That's one of my.
That kind of puts a damper on my poll, but because people now don't want to raise hands. But for whom is it? Does it feel like you would say, where is she at? Can I just see, where is she at versus where is she? I'd say, where is she? Okay, so you know, we have different, depending on where you go, that poll is going to turn out differently, obviously.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I would only say, where is she if she was missing.
Oh.
Where is she at is more like the location.
Right. Where is she is more like, where has she gone? She was supposed to be here. Mm-hmm. Where has she gone?
Okay.
Yeah.
Where is she at is more.
Yeah. Where is she is like what happened to her.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Notice that my daughter and I have different dialects.
Apparently.
As happens, I have completely different dialect from my parents.
Oh yeah, no.
Yeah. Well, good. Shirley raises a beautiful question. I'd like Shirley, you know, you wrote it so well. Can you go ahead and ask that for us?
Okay. Well, when we were living in Senegal, we were told that the word wow in English came from Wolof. And wow just means yes. You hear it a lot. If you listen to any Senegalese music, which is amazing music, you hear wow, wow, wow a lot. And the other thing that we heard, which I thought was fascinating, was the use of cat. If you heard the expression a cool cat, there were a lot of American jazz musicians who played music with Senegalese jazz.
Yeah.
It's kind of something I think of as being from the jazz age or something, a cool cat. because in Wolof, you the way that you say that someone is a musician is you take the noun music and add cat to it. So music cat would be a musician, and
Teach cat.
teach cat would be a teacher, and cook cat would be a chef. So
now, is that the English word cat, or is there a Wolof word that sounds like cat? Or
no, it's the Wolof sound cat. I have no idea how it's even spelled.
Okay.
And I'm going to toss in with that hep-cat, which I've also heard comes from Africa, and I wasn't sure if it was Wolof or another language. But any thoughts on that?
So it would be this sounds like an agentive suffix. Interesting. So it wouldn't be drive cat. It would be whatever the Wolof word is for drive plus the sound cat. Okay. What about for wow? Does it mean oh, that's amazing? Or you said it means yes. I'm thinking it's not. I don't know if it's in the same semantic field, but no, I don't know the answer to that. That's a job for dictionary people.
You could see how it could be interpreted as yes.
Yes.
Like somebody
Wow.
Wow. And
yes.
Yeah. So yeah, it kind of has the same meaning.
Especially in music. Yeah. Anybody have any other knowledge of that? No. Okay.
But it's related to something I've seen about okay, that the K is a suffix in certain languages.
Well, yeah,
K.
that's the one of the other etymologies for okay, which is from Cherokee okay. And I don't buy that one because it seems unlikely that we would borrow a word from Cherokee at that time. But I have to say that the all correct abbreviation one is pretty out there too. So but yeah, that this is one of the places where the accepted etymology still smells fishy to me.
I have a question I'm going to raise. So, this is one that bugs me.
Oh, all intensive purposes. That's a good one. Oh, I love these.
So,
I love folk etymologies. Yeah.
So this has now reached, this particular folk etymology I've seen now as, included in Saturday Night Live sketches, and it's meaning it's being outed and looked at and made fun of. But I know a lot of these make their way into becoming acceptable.
Oh, yeah.
Do you think this one will make it? I mean, what's going to happen with something like this?
Well, the problem with this one is that it's formal language. So that's why people aren't aware of they've never heard of all intents and purposes anyway, right? So intense and intensive, intensive might be the only word that they can think of that sounds vaguely like intense and, but you ordinarily don't talk about plural intents, right? Intents and purposes.
Mm-hmm.
Mondegreen, that's another name for folk etymology that comes from the misinterpretation of song lyrics. So they've slain the Earl of Murray and laid him on the green, but the person who invented Mondegreen interpreted laid him on the green as Lady Mondegreen, and that she was always wondering who this Lady Mondegreen was. Yeah.
So even the name of a Mondegreen comes from a Mondegreen.
Well, it's and in the Linguist, the language log, they call them eggcorns as because that's the folk etymology for acorn. So nobody seems to like the official term folk etymology. They prefer, eggcorns or mondegreens. Yeah, but I've been writing papers on this since 1979. So I love collecting these. Taking something for granted, yeah, and why not, right? And unless you know where it comes from, you don't know the correct spelling because you don't recognize the the origin of the phrase.
Right.
Yeah.
Irregardless is becoming very big.
You know, irregardless, that's a nice one. That's a nice blend of irregarding and regardless. And so you put
I
them
thought that
together.
I thought it was an overcorrection. People thought people thought it needed to seem more negative.
Yeah, well, that's why. Yeah, so especially since the prefix "ear" doesn't always mean negative, so you have well, inflammable could mean not
irregular.
flammable, or could what?
Irregular.
Irregular, not regular. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you also have inflammable versus inflammable. So it's either inflames or it's not flammable. And so the two words mean the opposite of each other. Yeah. It could create problems.
I had that too when I was young. I had that corrected by a friend. Is like, no, you don't say irregardless. This is the kind of environment I grew up in Bethesda. But he said, no, that's wrong. That's don't sound like an idiot. Say regardless. Don't say irregardless. So I was corrected, and I do say regardless. I kind of have it in my head now.
I like the question from Joan Booth. Let's see. Today, a student said gonna, then corrected herself to say going to. But if it's appropriate to say gonna in that context, that's a really good thing that she's done. I mean, she's observed when to use it, and is using the appropriate reduction, and that also means that she'll understand it when she hears it, which is another big problem, because gonna let's see, wanna, lots of other reduced fast speech phrases like that are hard for learners to understand as want to. Yeah, gotta, that's another good one. Yeah. But yeah, so if you know where it comes from, if you know that gonna is going to, then you'll know when to write it and when to say it. But I would encourage that, actually.
Yeah, we actually went into a conversation about gonna, wanna, letta. We did all that, but I'm like, oh my goodness, she's so advanced. What do I teach her next? I mean, but isn't there kind of a concept, like, do you think she's thinking in English? I mean, how, like, she's advanced, but like how advanced, or what kind of level is she at, or
that's a good question. I would say what she's doing with gonna is she's learning the language in chunks, as opposed to putting each morpheme together piece by piece. Because if she's I'm going to go do this, if she's got that whole phrase together like that, she's using a different part of her brain than the part that assembles the words into the right order, and it's going to be a more accurate pronunciation, and it's going to be more fluent, and she'll be able to use it in more context. But as was it Mark said, you don't want to use that in the formal context, or you certainly don't want to be trying to spell that in writing. So this is something you don't use in writing, but it's the way we pronounce it.
But it's okay to text. I mean, there are times.
Yeah, texting is more.
It's perfectly okay. Yeah. But when you email your professor, don't say you're going to do something.
Shirley, you had a comment
that I always felt was that if you, I used to have students who would have a very syllable timed speech, but they would throw in the word gonna, but they wouldn't reduce it. And so it's like, if they're going to use gonna and wanna, they have to kind of get some of the other elements of spoken language right, or it sounds very awkward.
Right. Yeah. So if they're speaking informally, then they should do the whole sentence informally, right? They should follow the fast speech rules throughout. Otherwise, sticking a gonna or kids or you guys in there, which I've heard some learners use because they think this is what people would say. I've had students who use Indian English, actually, who say you guys as the plural for you, and in formal contexts that's really inappropriate. to say you guys, maybe you all, but not y'all, right? And so if you're going to be using gonna, then you've got to talk the talk. You've got to do the rest of it as well, right?
Yeah, gonna is one of the words that keeps me up at night. And
does it?
Yeah,
That's
it does.
cool.
I worry about it because and when I looked it up in the Merriam-Webster online dictionary, and phonetically they spell it G schwa in schwa, and then they put a stress mark on the first syllable.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking you can't stress a schwa.
Sure you can.
We've had this discussion recently, and I was a little blown away, Robin. I have to say, I've been under the impression that schwa was inherently unstressed, but it's the second time it's come up. So tell us more.
Yeah. Well, look at the word, I don't know, just or bus. I mean, those are all stressed schwas, right?
But they have their own upside down V symbol.
Well,
so
that's
those are mustard
look
words.
at look at your cup of mustard. There it is. Cup of mustard is schwa, but when you stress schwa, there's that upside down V symbol that you can use. That tends to be a little bit lower, so it's not just, it's just, right, or bus. And when it's unstressed, it's a little bit more central, but you can use schwa for all of these.
Really? So that's what I want to do.
I remember when Karen and I were first working on the chart, she wanted to have the two symbols when we used to have the symbols. And I kept saying, I have never distinguished it for my students, and I've never felt that they needed to distinguish between the stressed and the unstressed. I always just called it schwa. It seemed like it was simpler. I remember do you remember having this discussion?
Yeah.
Well, there's two schwas, isn't there?
Well, but
there's also the barred I. There's the high schwa, which some people distinguish.
There's and then there's
So I mean, that's just it. Like I think it's interesting that we're calling this stressed schwa. Is that what we're doing?
Yeah, I would say that you can't, in English, you can't use this symbol in an unstressed environment. But
right.
You can certainly use the schwa symbol in a stressed environment. I mean, it's sort of the schwa is the cover term for all of those central, well, it's everything that's covered by mustard, is what I would say.
Interesting.
And if you want to distinguish the different parts of the mustard, I don't know, what would you call a pile of mustard? You know, you could have the barred I that some people have in roses, as opposed, or Georges, as opposed to Rosas and Georgias. Yeah.
Roses. Yeah. Well, it's
so
just
roses
because it
and Georges.
seems we would keep, these for the stressed concept.
Yeah.
And just like everything else, there's no name for it, so we call it mustard. And then there's that one, phenomenon of reduction that can be any vowel coming here. So, it's interesting. I really do like keeping schwa for the concept of reduction.
That's interesting.
So
you want to have a complementary distribution both ways. So you don't like the merger of schwa including too many different things. You want to have either only the mustard one versus only the reduced vowel one. I've never heard of a linguist to do that, but I guess you can do that if you want.
It's my body and I'll cry. Oh, wait, what?
That's
how I've always thought of it.
As teachers, do you think it matters to our students? Or
No.
it's okay to call it schwa for both?
I don't bring it up, yeah.
I try to not call it, I call it mustard when it's stressed, and I call it schwa when it's unstressed.
That's me.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Because schwa is the part that's down here. If we make it all physical and not talk about it, then if we want to mention, your schwa is here, because students bring that to the table.
So where's your mustard?
We've got a cup of mustard. And a cup. All this refers to as stress.
Okay.
A cup of mustard. So you have the same, you have allophones of the same kind of position, if that sounds right. But
yeah, okay.
you still have stress.
This is like when I was going through Peru teaching like workshops, pronunciation, everyone said, I understand mustard, but I still don't understand what schwa is because they couldn't get the idea of stress, not stress. And
right. Yeah. So if you call a schwa mustard, then to me, that's trying to stress every syllable. Right. But I have no problem. I have no problem using mustard, using schwa for the stressed version. How many of you have cats on you?
I was going to say, I really felt the need to let my cat do this because now I've seen so many with their cats. I think this will be our upcoming theme for our Fridays is bring your cat with you and or your other pets. I mean, I'm open.
Have my puppy.
your puppy there. So yeah, we've got him going on here. And then we'll have instrument petting day. We'll have the day where Doug breaks out his guitar and I'll get out the bass. And I know that Tony has the instrument ready.
I'll bring my kazoo.
So, I want to thank Robin Barr. Can we all do either one or two-handed visual applause there? Beautiful.
This was fun.
This is a lot of fun.
I love this. Thank you for all the questions. It looks like there's more than we actually got to. Natalia, I'm sorry we didn't get to your last one about can it be done? Yeah.
So thanks.
We'll save that one for next time.
We will. We always like to have some leftovers, leave them wanting more, and we'll see you again soon. Have a great week. Happy weekend.
I'm really happy to see my family here.
Yes, thank you. White, hi.
Great to meet the progeny.
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.
That was fun.
She came on cue. Good to see you, Mark.
All right.
Happy Friday. Take care. Bye-bye.
Yep.
Robin.
Bye. Thank you.
When are we going to get you a phone? What's up?
Stop recording and then I'll tell you.
Oh, that's right. Bye. Wait.